Cities globally are facing this intensifying challenge,
Right.
the relentless rise of urban heat, and the search for truly innovative, scalable solutions is more urgent than ever. Okay, let's unpack this. Our deep dive today is into a project called AOC. Its mission, basically, is to deliver city-scale, on-demand solar attenuation, right, which means, reducing direct sunlight by a tunable 20 to 60%, and all without a permanent footprint on the ground, the ingenious part. It uses a self-assembling fleet of high-altitude platforms that, get this, also function as thin-film photovoltaic power plants.
Yeah. What's fascinating here is how it attempts to address a complex problem with such an integrated approach. It's not just a cooling idea. It's trying to be a whole system: energy, adaptability, cooling. It's a really unique blend.
That integration is compelling, absolutely. So let's get into the specifics. What is OSC exactly? The full name gives a clue. Adaptive Stratospheric Cloud Engineered Net for Thermal Relief. Essentially, it's described as a featherlight, voltage-tunable, diffractive cloud. And it's slung between these autonomous stratospheric airships. Imagine the immediate advantages. It actively lowers peak urban heat. It generates its own power. It can fold away when it's not needed, apparently. Plus, it's designed for easy shipping and deployment. Really seems to stand apart from, static single-purpose ideas.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, ASCE is a direct response to this urgent need for cooling solutions in dense urban fabric. I mean, as global temperatures rise and cities grow, they just become these heat traps, don't they? Affecting public health, energy use, everything. This system aims to provide a dynamic, large-scale intervention right where it's most needed.
Okay, so to really get our heads around it, we need to break it down. What are the pieces, the components that make this giant sky shade work? Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about the parts that make this giant sky shade work. First up, you've got the control fleet. They call them Sky Station airships. Big ones about 250 meters long, filled with helium, operating way up there at 20 to 22 kilometers altitude. And their job isn't just floating. They actively hold position, they supply power to the whole system, and they host all the communications and the edge AI.
That edge AI is key, isn't it, for the autonomous part?
Absolutely. It allows for real-time, onboard decision-making, adjustments without constant contact with the ground. Makes it incredibly responsive. Then there's the main event, the shade membrane. This is the actual shading bit. It's incredibly thin, a 5-micrometer thick diffractive polymer film layered onto this ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene scrim. Sounds complex.
Well, it is advanced material science. That screen
Yeah.
provides strength. The polymer does the work.
Right, and it's patterned into these pixelated Fresnel rings. Its function is to actively redirect sunlight into harmless diffraction orders.
So not just blocking, but bending the light. Precision control.
Exactly. And this delicate membrane is stretched between the airships, the fleet nodes, at 21 kilometers up. But it's not just a shade, it's also the energy layer. The whole system is designed to power itself. It uses these 30% efficient perovskite silicon tandem PV cells, really advanced solar cells.
It's state-of-the-art stuff, yeah.
They're on the upper side of the membrane and also on the gondola roofs of the airships. And they generate a lot of power, 3 to 5 megawatts per node,
Wow.
which is enough to run the airship's propulsion, its cooling fans, and actually allows for surplus energy export.
So it generates more than it needs just to stay up there.
Seems so. And finally, there's the ground segment. This part's optional but integrated. It includes an operations center, obviously, and these microwave rectennas. They're for scheduling the fleet, targeting the shadow of the Umbra exactly where it's needed, and then off-taking that surplus power. And they say it can integrate with local grids or even green hydrogen plants.
Choosing the stratosphere, that 20 to 22 kilometers, this raises an important question about choosing the right environment for such an ambitious system. And the stratosphere offers these unique advantages. It's well above conventional aircraft that usually top out around 12 kilometers, right?
Right.
And crucially, it's above most weather patterns. That gives you a stable, relatively calm platform. Essential for a structure this large and, frankly, delicate.
Yeah, that stability must be absolutely critical. Okay, so it's clear this isn't just putting a big blanket in the sky. It's about some seriously clever next-generation tech. Let's dig into those novel principles, the wow factors. One of the big ones is the diffractive shading versus opaque approach. Like you said, not just blocking. Each little 10 by 10 centimeter pixel on the membrane has these sub-wavelength grooves, tiny patterns, smaller than the wavelength of light itself.
Which gives incredible control over light interaction.
Exactly. And a tiny voltage, less than 10 volts, shifts the refractive index of an electro-optic layer in there. This lets each pixel switch between three modes: clear, so transparent; diffuse, which spreads the light energy over about plus or minus 5 degrees; or block, which deflects the energy away at 45 degrees.
So you get continuous grayscale control, not just on or off.
Right. Continuous control of solar gain, but with incredibly low mass. They say less than 10 grams per square meter.
That's
Yeah.
astonishingly light.
It is. Over 100 times lighter than aluminum foil is the comparison they use, that kind of mass reduction. Well, it changes everything for deployment and cost, doesn't it?
Fundamentally, yeah.
Okay, another novel principle: the tension-spoked spiderweb geometry. Picture 3 or more of those sky stations forming a big triangle. Could be 3 to 8 kilometers on a side.
Huge area.
Huge. And these aramid spokes reel out and lock between them. Then the membrane unfurls in these modular sort of diamond shapes, lozenges between the spokes. But the really clever part is the active reel in and reel out system.
So it's adaptable.
Totally. The web can grow or shrink based on the city's needs, or even furl up completely during storm seasons.
Practical.
Then there's autonomous wind shear surfing. This is the smart flight control. Each airship has 8 electrically ducted fans. Using that edge AI we mentioned, the system predicts stratospheric shear cells, basically winds up there about 30 minutes ahead.
Okay.
And it adjusts its ballast and thrust, so the whole constellation kind of glides sideways a few kilometers each day, using almost no propellant.
So it's surfing the winds, basically. Energy-efficient repositioning.
Exactly, to keep the shadow exactly where it needs to be. And finally, for times when less cooling is needed, there's the integrated energy export. Any extra solar energy, maybe on clear days or in winter, can be beamed down. They mention using 5.8 gigahertz microwave to ground antenna farms.
Which sounds like space-based solar power concepts.
Similar tech, yes. But here's the crucial difference. It's only 160th the distance. We're talking 20-odd kilometers versus hundreds or thousands from orbit.
Much closer.
Much. Which means, in their words, benign link budgets. A fancy way of saying the power transfer is way more efficient. Less than 20 dB total loss, apparently. Far better than classic space solar ideas.
That's a significant advantage. And what's fascinating here is the dynamic control. The ability to tune the shade hour by hour, season by season, rather than a static solution. That adaptability, plus the power generation, plus the smart flight, it really makes it seem versatile and efficient, responding to changing needs. But, given these advancements, what do you see as the biggest hurdle moving this from concept to, well, actually flying over a city?
Yeah.
Beyond the tech itself?
That's a really important question. Public acceptance, regulation, cost. Lots to consider. But before we get bogged down in hurdles, let's talk performance. Let's look at the performance envelope. What does this all mean for you, living in a city that needs cooling? Well, A.s.c.e.n.t promises an effective daytime insolation cut sunlight reduction of 20 to 60%. And remember, that's tunable.
Okay, and what does that feel like?
It translates, they estimate, to a mean radiant temperature drop that's MRT, kind of the felt temperature, including surfaces of about 5 to 12 degrees Celsius in dense urban areas.
5 to 12 degrees, that's huge. That's the difference between unbearable and manageable on a hot day.
It really is a potentially massive impact. Now, scale. One constellation, one of these triangles, can cover anywhere from 250 to 800 square kilometers. That depends on the side length of the triangle web.
So easily covering a large portion of a major city.
Definitely. And the fleet mass 3 airships plus the membrane is around 450 tons. But listen to this. 70% of that mass is just the helium lifting gas.
Right.
Only about 5% is the actual membrane doing the work. Total PV output in full sun is between 10 and 15 megawatts, with about 30% kept back for station keeping, running the fans and systems.
Still leaves a decent amount for potential export.
Seems like it. As for endurance and deployment, they're aiming for 18 months uptime before needing a helium top-up. The membrane itself, with a UV hardcoat, is designed for a 5-year life.
5 years is pretty good for something that thin, that high up.
And getting it up there sounds surprisingly manageable. It folds into just 4 standard shipping containers, ISO containers per node, and deployment. From any 300-meter runway using helium fill and an electric winch.
Doesn't require a massive space launch facility or anything.
Not at all.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, these performance metrics suggest a very tangible and impactful solution. I mean, that 5 to 12 degrees Celsius drop in MRT is substantial for comfort, for public health. And the scale, the adaptability. It could really tackle the urban heat island effect across large areas. It's not just tinkering around the edges. It could be a significant shift in urban livability.
Okay, so that's the potential. But why is A.s.c.e.n.t being framed as such a leap forward? Why does it beat conventional ideas? What makes it a potential game changer?
Well, it starts with that massive mass advantage. We touched on it, but it bears repeating. Under 10 grams per square meter for the membrane compared to maybe 1.5 kilos per square meter for something like aluminum lamellae,
That's, yeah, orders of magnitude difference, about 150 times lighter.
which translates directly to 150 times cheaper launch energy, they claim.
Hmm.
That just rewrites the economics of doing something this big in the atmosphere, makes it potentially viable where it wasn't before.
Absolutely crucial. Cost is always a factor. Then there's the dynamic, not static control. We keep coming back to this, but it's key. Unlike fixed shades or reflective roofs, cities can dial in the exact amount of shading needed, hour by hour, season by season.
Which avoids that winter overcooling problem you sometimes get with permanent solutions.
Exactly. A big plus. Another major benefit, no ground easements. Because it's all happening 20 kilometers up, it frees up that scarce, expensive urban land.
Right. And the power antennas.
Can be put in rural areas outside the city center, reducing that urban land pressure even more.
Smart.
And finally, a point that will certainly interest city managers, auxiliary revenue. During months when you don't need much cooling, maybe winter, maybe clearer periods, the fleet isn't idle. It can act as a high-altitude solar farm, beaming down power and generating income.
So it pays its way, potentially, even when it's not cooling. That economic angle is very attractive. This raises an important question. How do we incentivize broad adoption of such technologies? These economic and flexibility benefits are crucial arguments. But while the mass advantage and dynamic control are clear wins, are there situations where maybe a more local ground-based solution might still be better, say for a very specific small park or square?
Oh, absolutely. It's not a silver bullet for every single situation. Different tools for different jobs, always. But for large-scale urban cooling, this seems compelling. But like any ambitious project, there are risks. And A.s.c.e.n.t seems to have put thought into addressing risks and mitigations. For instance, what about stratospheric turbulence? It's generally calm, but not perfectly still.
Right, things can still happen up there.
Their mitigation involves making the membrane in redundant hexel segments, like a honeycomb, and having automatic patch drones, based on the airships, that use melt-bond spare film to fix tears.
So localized damage doesn't take out the whole thing, and it can self-repair. Clever.
Seems like it. Next risk, helium scarcity and cost. Helium isn't getting cheaper.
True, a global issue.
The plan is, initially, to use a mixed 20% helium, 80% nitrogen with pressure-compensated ballast inside the airship envelope to manage altitude. Longer term, they're looking at switching to zero boil-off hydrogen.
Hydrogen has much better lift, but safety.
Addressed, they say, with fire-retardant aerogel brake layers. Advanced safety measures. Okay, what about aviation interference? A giant structure up there.
Big concern, yeah.
Safeguards include a geofenced no-fly corridor, basically telling planes to stay clear in upper Class A airspace where few planes fly anyway. Plus, the membrane itself is designed to be reflective to radar and ADS-B signals, so air traffic control can see it.
Visible and avoidable.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And finally, environmental points. Wildlife and night sky impact.
Important considerations.
They state the diffractive film reflects less than 5% into the ground visible spectrum at night. So, minimal light pollution compared to, say, city lights themselves, and the altitude, 20 plus kilometers, is well above where migratory birds fly.
Okay, so minimal impact on birds. What's fascinating here is the forward-thinking approach. They seem to have anticipated potential issues and are designing solutions right into the system. That level of risk assessment and built-in mitigation really builds confidence in the feasibility, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Suggests a mature, responsible design process.
It does seem thorough. So, with all this innovation, what makes a A.s.c.e.n.t actually unique enough for patentability? How does it stand apart from things we might have heard of before?
The sources point to three main pillars of novelty. First, the pixelated electro-optic diffractive shading film itself.
The core tech.
Yeah. They say it's novel compared to, say, MIT's space bubbles idea. Those were global, passive, non-switchable. And also, different from sol-cold coatings, which are radiative cooling surfaces. So A.s.c.e.n.'s film is tunable, localized, and diffractive. Different mechanism, different application.
Precisely. Second pillar. The Tri-Sky Station tension-spoked deployment method, that specific spiderweb geometry and the way it deploys, they argue it's distinct from, like, Google Loon's single balloons for telecom,
Right, Loon was about individual balloons drifting.
or things like the Airbus Zephyr ATS, which are also mainly single platforms for surveillance or comms. This is a networked structure.
A cooperative constellation forming a specific shape. Got it.
And third, the dual-use PV shade membrane with microwave export. Combining city-specific shading with power beaming at this relatively short link distance under 100 kilometers, they state has no prior art.
So the unique combination of functions at that specific atmospheric layer and distance.
Exactly. That synergy is novel.
This really raises an important question about the convergence of technologies. How combining elements from different fields, metamaterials, aerospace, AI, power beaming, can create something genuinely new. These distinct pillars, they're not just small tweaks, they seem like significant inventive steps. That's key for breakthrough potential and, attracting the investment needed to actually build it.
What an illuminating deep dive. Even it really does sound like it could be a practical, globally deployable answer to these scorching cities we're seeing more and more of. It fuses advances in materials, high-altitude platforms, AI flight control, offering the sophisticated, adaptable solution, and importantly, without needing those huge, decades-away orbital mega projects.
Absolutely. So what does this all mean for you listening? Consider how quickly a system like this, if proven and deployed, could reshape daily life in the world's hottest cities. It's not just about the cooling, important as that is. It's potentially about transforming urban energy landscapes too, making our dense cities far more livable, more sustainable. It's a vision of a cooler future, quite literally taking shape high up in the sky.